Remothered, Tormented Fathers is developed by Stormine Games, published by Darrell Arts, and was released on October 31st, 2017. It is a survival horror game in the most classic way, in which your main goal is running away from stalking enemies and methodically planning out your moves so you don't get caught. It reminded me of older games like Siren, Clock Tower, and Haunting Ground, with tense moments in the story and feelings of despair while running around trying to catch my bearings. The unnerving atmosphere and situations prove dire for a desperate need to escape, but being hasty will oftentimes be your downfall. The story follows a woman named Rosemary Reed, in which we inexplicably don't get any backstory on, trying to get into a villa to talk to someone named Dr. Richard Felton. Felton believes Reed is there for an interview about his incurable disease, but Reed presses Felton about the mysterious disappearance of his daughter. After being shown the door, Reed sneaks back in to get answers from Felton's wife, but finds her corpse decaying in a bed. Reed is then trapped inside with a deranged Felton roaming around, and from there the story spirals into insane revelations and heightened frights. I really liked the intriguing story of Remothered, Tormented Fathers. The plot really takes its time to play out, and I think that works for the game. The story is really miserable and heartbreaking, which gives you, the player, a lot more to chew on while you are slowly solving the puzzles within the estate. The cutscenes are long, but it's not hard to stay involved with what is happening, with decent voice acting and ever-twisting story thread elements. The characters disregard each other on a personal level, and the multiple conundrums that pop up over time add even more flavor to this horror tale. Remothered, Tormented Fathers is intense and relentless. Getting caught by a pursuer can quite easily mean instant game over if you are not careful, and it takes some time to understand the pace the game urges you to abide by. There are a lot of mechanics when it comes to the actual gameplay, and other than quick tutorial prompts, there is no hand-holding through this game at all. The crux of the gameplay comes down to dealing with the pursuer, which many modern-day horror games don't really handle that well. You have a lot of options here, but a lot of the time, you don't even have to use many of the resources you have at your disposal, especially if you take your time, or if you are adept to games like this. Other times, though, it feels like the game is fighting against you, with its unwieldy movements and awkward collisions. Reed can crouch, dodge, and run to stealthily traverse her environment or to try to get away from someone that is chasing her. Reed has a flashlight at her disposal to light up dark corners, and there are tables and couches to hide under. If the pursuer gets near your hiding space, a small minigame will play out in order to stay extra quiet. If you fail the minigame, the pursuer will hear you and pull you out of your hiding spot. Reed has a diary that you can open to keep up on story beats and analyze your collectibles to get a better grasp on the truth. There are many different items you can pick up and use. There are diversion items, distraction items, and defensive items. You can hold 3 diversion items at once, and there are some that are throwable, like bricks, and others that are stationary, like an alarm clock. The stationary diversion items are basically useless, since you don't want to draw the attention of the pursuer toward you. You can use it to draw them into a location and sneak past them, but there is hardly any wiggle room to do that in the tight hallways and open rooms, and it's practically a waste of time when you can just do something different that will work better. Distraction items are also stationary, but they are items that are around the house, like a radio or a TV that can be turned on. Defensive items like knives or scissors are what you will be gunning for. You can only hold one at a time and they can only be used once, but they are very useful. If the attacker grabs you while you are holding a defensive item, you will have to complete the button mashing minigame to use the item and escape their grasp. There are also a few wire spools placed at different places in the house that upgrade your defensive item to either do more damage or let it be used more than once. There are also key items that you will need to progress the story. Overall, the game is easier than you think because the game gives you a bunch of different ways to handle a situation, when in fact, it's probably more useful to only mess with a couple of different items. For instance, you can pick up a rope and tie it around a door handle to lock it for a little bit, so it takes the pursuer a longer time to get into a room. But you can easily just hide somewhere, throw an item at them to stun them, or just run somewhere else. The game can be finished in a few hours if you know what you are doing, but going through the game for the first time is sort of difficult because there is no sort of guidance when it comes to the puzzles or where to put a certain key item to activate the next part of the game. That's not a detriment of the game though. In fact, I think it makes the game more beguiling. Having a character like Reed, an older female protagonist, is also something you don't see very often. Her cool, collected, and determined demeanor makes for a good heroine in a horror story like this. The game does feel very dated with awkward movements, old-looking graphics, weird animations, and bad lip syncing. Odd things like the pursuers finding you when they for sure can't see you, or pursuers not finding you when they can for sure see you, pull you out of the game and the dreadful atmosphere rather quickly. The art style is great overall though, creating a damp and glazed-like atmosphere, making everything look like an oil painting.
You came to us to free us from evil.
Oh, God.
The music is bleak and carefully controlled throughout the game. The intro to the game in particular really pulled me into the story immediately with the music and really shapes what kind of story you are getting into. The sound of Reed holding her breath or murmuring to herself that she needs to get out of the predicament that she's in adds a nice extra touch of realism that you don't often experience in other horror games. The sounds of approaching footsteps echoing down a hall continue to prove terrifying throughout the entire adventure. Remothered Tormented Fathers has an absorbing story, a nice art style, and some fun gameplay elements, but the mediocrity in most of its departments slows it down a bit. Clunky gameplay moments with stunted movements and cumbersome design where it seems as if it wasn't able to fully grasp and realize the potential with most gameplay mechanics is upsetting. Remothered Tormented Fathers shouldn't be skipped though. The blueprint laid out by horror games of the past really comes to life here, and trudging through this ominous escapade with Reed is an experience worth any horror fan's time. I give Remothered Tormented Fathers a 7 out of 10.